todos llevemos una misma voz de la defensa de la vida, no la violencia, donde tengamos en cuenta que no queremos que falten más mujeres, que no queremos ni una menos y queremos que no haya más femicidas.
Hello and welcome to Telesur. I'm Carla González and this is Interviews from Caracas. Today we are discussing the alarming figures of femicides in Latin America and how to stop them. Today we will be discussing this with María Ramírez Hernández, an advocate for women's rights. Thank you, María, for being with us.
Thank you, Carla.
So first, let's get this straight. Femicide, feminicide, what's the difference?
When we talk about femicide, we talk about the act of a man killing a woman because of gender reasons. That means because she's a woman. That's what drives the murder or the killing. And when we talk about feminicide, is when we start to point out the role that the state plays within that action of a man killing a woman.
Or even not doing something that it needs to do. For example, allowing legal counsel, giving way for judicial protection as well.
Yes, because when the state allows it or prevents it, in both cases, the state has responsibility right there. So that's what we point out, the role that the state plays.
So let's discuss Latin America. It's still considered one of the most dangerous regions to be a woman. Can you tell us a bit more about the facts? You had some numbers that you wanted to share with us.
Yes, actually within probably the most 25, the most dangerous countries in the world, Latin America, our region has a lot of our countries in the top 25. Obviously we know the origins of the violence here, a lot has been because the way our society has been molded after the European invasion, after that model of society. And so from there, our society, has become violent and violent against women, because obviously our societies from Mexico to Argentina and in the Caribbean, they have also had the example of the patriarchy or the system for where our society, is under. So the region, what I was looking at some stats from the UN, from the United Nations, Honduras has been one of the countries that has had the highest rate historically. And right now, El Salvador has the highest rate, if we count from 2016, 2017, which are the most recent facts. And so, for example, in Argentina, there's another alarming rate with the social movements having the stats of a woman being killed or a femicide every 18 hours.
And we saw large demonstrations across Argentina in the past years with the Ni Una Menos organizations. What's the role that they play here? Are they the only ones defending women?
Well, it seems like it. But we know that there are some governments in our region that have done more, or that have taken some steps towards protecting women. No, I think that social movements are the ones, like always, doing the work that the states or the government that they don't do. So that work means, identifying the problem, going to women and talking to them face to face, organizing towards really ending the root of the problems. Because, sometimes the states or the governments, they work towards prevention, but they don't really work towards the root of the cause of the violence against women or the cause of femicides in societies.
So what would you say would be an effective strategy to attack this problem?
I think, first of all, we have to look at it as a real problem, as a problem that is in our society, that is not in the houses of women that have been killed, or the women who are, experiencing gender violence. I think that's one big step, because when the state in society look at it as a public health issue, that means that it's an issue of all of us. And it involves all of us. It involves education. It involves the state giving women real economic opportunities to move forward with their lives and achieve their dreams. And that means, having more women independently out there, more women having knowledge that they don't have to allow violent situations upon themselves or upon their bodies. And another thing is, I believe that women, we have to keep getting together, we have to keep uniting, and we have to really speak more and develop, strategies of protection and strategies of prevention.
So you've been working in some organizations to defend women's rights. Mm-hmm. What would you say were the most effective ways to do so? Through education, through prevention?
Mm-hmm. I think one of the most important things is to teach women how to react upon violent situations. Because, we can teach a woman how to prevent it, but we can't teach a woman can prevent a violence coming from any man in society, from their families, their schools. So, for example, one of the important things is being or having women train, or having women do courses of personal defense, or like how to in a minimum way be able to get out of a violent situation without having to be killed. Another thing, that there's a proposal of the lesbo-feminism movement in our region, which is to really be a part of those who execute these violent actions, which are men. So, for example, if we identify a violent man within our surroundings, we exclude them from our social circle. We exclude them. We don't laugh at their jokes. We don't go out with them to drink a beer. We don't sit and have lunch with them. And not only the person who's being, or the person who's experiencing the violence, but their friends, their families, and their social circle also excludes that person. So, that could be an interesting way. I think it could be a good social experiment, because if we see as society is today, a lot of things that we have done have not worked because women are still dying.
And it seems like a very small actions that we can take part on, like not laughing at a joke, not liking a post on Facebook, not sharing content that is wrong, that it's bad against women.
Yes, because men have social support. And then when you have that social support in society, that makes you feel strong, and that makes you feel with the right to execute violent actions upon others, and those others being women, mainly. But so when you don't have that social support, you're not gonna have anybody to support you in your violent actions. And plus having the state, having a strong legal action against these violent actions, then you're attacking the problem in different ways. That means, that you can actually stop it faster.
So this also connects to the fact that there are gender roles, specific gender roles that society has created or allowed it to continue throughout time. How does that play along in this situation?
Well, since children are born, the society has the gender roles, as you say. So, for example, for men or for boys, small boys, it's very important for them to show who's the strong one, who's in charge, who's like the alpha male, and all these kind of theories that are behind violent actions. For example, women, we are not in that constant, alpha male role, but we have other kind of gender roles. But a man, for example, they are taught not to cry, not to express their emotions, which can also in any person, start to build up repression, and then that carried out violent actions. So, for example, gender roles you can talk about for little boys. Violence against those who are considered inferior or less stronger than them, and in that category, women are there, because in the like the ideology of the patriarchy system, or in the ideology of most societies around the world, is that that men have the highest, the highest part in society, and they are the stronger ones, so they have to show it all the time.
So would you say it's not only a matter of teaching women how to protect themselves from violent behaviors and avoid being harassed, or in the case of many women killed, but also to talk to men and teach them how to see society in a different way, how to see their counterparts as equal?
Yes, because the problem is not many men actually organize and work with themselves and with other men to attack this problem, And
so would you say, for example, a meeting of men to discuss how to get rid of their own biases against other women?
Yes, and against themselves, because that's also a very big problem. I mean, just get rid of them being violent. Like, we can start there, And then there is like a expectation that women or the feminist movements around our region or the world teach men, but they are perfectly able of teaching themselves, organizing themselves. So there is like a cry in the region for men to actually organize and start, taking actions towards ending violence, because who are the ones that most execute this violence? Men, right? So if men actually care about a better society, if men are actually revolutionaries, why are you not seeing that as a problem, and why are you not attacking it?
So yeah, so that's a part that of course needs to be worked on, the human part, the one that we can address. But there's also the part of the legal system and how we can prevent these things from happening, femicide from happening from inside the legislative assemblies, the parliaments, how to make laws against femicides. We have 18 countries in Latin America that have laws to protect women, but is that enough?
Yes, it's not enough, because the law can't prevent humans from executing an action. It's not like I need a law to tell me I can raise my arm to actually raise my arm. So, I mean, with the laws, there has to be a cultural change. And that's the hardest part, because we, in this part of the world, in this region, we have, this whole history of colonization, which is a violent history. So we are, a violent society because of this process that we've undergone. So we need to work on having the state really prevent and stop violent situations.
So you were discussing the issue of a violent state, a violent society. Is that the case in Venezuela? Does it happen here? How's the situation over here?
Yes, it happens here because the way that it is seen by the legal system, it is not in a prevention way. It is in a way of after the violence happens, So for example, the state has some offices or some police forces or some specific, ministries or offices that women can go to seek legal help. But really, what about all those women that can't even get there? What about the women that are in the rural area of Venezuela that can't have access, to the urban areas where those institutions are? So, for example, if another thing that happens a lot here is that when I go to the police and say, look, I'm being, or I'm having this violent situation, the police is like, well, but I don't see you have a black eye. Do you have blood somewhere? Did he beat you up? And when you say no, but for example, I'm being, harassed.
Exactly. He's calling me every day, something.
Exactly. And the police is like, so those kind of things are the failures, but it's not only here, it's in a lot of countries. But that's why we were saying that the laws are not enough, because also the state has to really, really consider it a public health issue. Just like if there is, I don't know, an illness that is attacking society, then the state activates and, you seek the shots and the pills and the medicine. In that same way, the state needs to see this as a problem. So a more active role the state needs to play.
And how has the state in Venezuela been reacting? For example, we saw a recent case of María Hernández, a student that she used to study right here at UNEARTES. We are at the Fine Arts Museum, right across from the University of Arts, where she studied to be a dancer. And she was killed by, according to authorities, her partner, her former partner.
Yes.
How was that seen here in the country? How was the reaction of the authorities and the reaction of the community as well?
Well, imagine a 25-year-old woman, mother of a child, a 2-year-old child. So you have a young woman, a student, who went to the authorities and said, look, I have this violent situations, and she has some legal restrictions with the guy. But here, we don't count, I don't know if the right word would be like the technology, or maybe, you know, the kind of like if maybe you could have a bracelet or an app on your phone or something that if I have a restriction from, you know,
a restraining order.
Yeah, restraining order. Like for example, me and you. So I have a restraining order. I can't get near you. So if I get near you, there needs to be something there that actually stops it. Here we don't count with that, and that's what happened to Mayel. She had that restraining order, and the man just simply broke it. He violated the restraining order and then went on to actually killing Mayel.
To stab her and strangle her as well.
Exactly, and in front of the 2-year-old, which is like really tough, because the reaction of the community is, you know, we've had enough. We really need to speak about this problem. This problem, we can't, you know, we can't see it as something that we can deal with later. We need to deal with it now, because we keep losing our young women, which is our young women who are also maintaining, you know, our political movement alive.
So would you say there's a climate of tolerance towards violent acts against women here and in the region?
Yes, I would say the climate is also because we keep having men up in those, you know, in those offices taking decisions. So for example, the state is full of men. So those men don't have any conscience of what femicides are or how they can be prevented, like, because they don't see it as a real problem, you know. And then we have society in which the patriarchy system is, you know, the hegemony out there. So obviously that ideology also doesn't see it as a problem. So it's a climate created by both.
So, for example, there are several organizations here in Venezuela that help women that are seeking protection from former boyfriends, former partners, former husbands that have been abusive, have been violent towards her. What is their role?
Well, the institutions, they have to keep going further. You know, it's not enough what they have done. And I understand that you know, the essence of the state is not to attack these kinds of problems, but the way the Venezuelan state is made up, you know, is to kind of have a transition from a state to a revolutionary state. So for example, in this revolutionary state, we need to see this as a problem. So we have done some things, but it hasn't been a priority. You know, for example, right now, economic war is the priority. But why isn't women's life being a priority there in the economic, you know, or right along with the economic war?
Or crossing through several aspects as well, because it's not only economic issues, it's also a political issue, it's a social issue, a judicial issue as well.
Exactly. So for example, women's ministry, right, like all these women that work there, they also need to take a step forward. You know, they need to also, for example, they need to march along with the women's rights, with the social movements. They need to march, you know, alongside the families of the women that are killed. They need to, I mean, we in Venezuela, we need a strong movement of women's lawyers that can actually go along with our women who are having a violent situation and then have their process actually be effective. You know, things like that, for example, institutions can start working on.
So it seems that it's also an issue to organize women to defend their rights. What would you say would be the main obstacle to not getting women to act, to speak out, to organize?
I think one of the things that in Venezuela here mostly that is very normal. Violence is something that is seen as a very normal thing. So, for example, if my boyfriend hits me or yells at me, it's like, oh no, you know, that's something that happened yesterday. Today he's loving with me again, and you know, he's very kind and blah blah blah. But okay, we need to really talk within women to really be able to identify this as a problem that can lead to you losing your life, because there's only a very small step from a man yelling at you to actually stabbing you. I mean, you know, that can happen in a year, that can happen in 2 weeks, but there is just, you know, a small step, because once a man shows violent actions against you, that means he's gonna keep doing it, and each time he's gonna do it, you know, do bigger violent actions.
So you've had experience with people suffering from verbal abuse, physical abuse as well, women in the country. Can you tell us a bit more about your experience or anything that you've learned from this process?
Well, I mean, even from my family history, you know, I've had, I grew up in a middle-class family in the Andes region of Venezuela, and for example, I've seen a lot of episodes where my uncles would beat up, I mean, in my face, in front of me, my aunts. And, you know, on top of that, you know, me being a lesbian woman, then all of the violence that I have been, you know, I have undergone, you know, with my gender identity, you know, with me not fitting into the feminine, you know, role that the society expects you to fit. And, I mean, also with friends. And, I mean, the most recent one that I experienced is that, you know, I was rented there in a room, and the lady who rented me the room had a boyfriend, and she had a restraining order against him, and one, you know, day he decided to come to the house and beat up all the windows. You know, he had a knife in his back pocket, so, you know, we called the police, so the police didn't get there fast enough. But then when the police actually arrived, they didn't take him to jail. They just like removed him from the property, and they stayed there from like maybe 1 hour or so, and then, you know, he left. But then he came back, like the next week he came back, and then there was another violent episode again, you know? So, I mean, the experience is that, you know, like we mentioned before, the state really needs to, I mean, if you have a police, you know, they have guns, they have, you know, the right or the license to stop these kind of situations, you know, peacefully or violently, depending on the situation. So if the police is there to do their job, then they have to do it.
Yeah, so before we end, I don't want to lose the opportunity to ask you, what would you say would be the most effective way to prevent? We've discussed everything we've discussed, talking to men, teaching them how to see society and female in society. We've seen talking about state responsibility, judicial system, the police system. Can you encompass everything, put it all in one, and tell me one main idea that we can get through to avoid more women being killed just for being women?
I think one of the most important thing is to debate with women other ways of loving, other ways of being in social relationships in general, you know, because we talk about gender violence, it's not only from your lover, it can be from your father, from your brother, from your coworker, from your boss. So other ways of having social relationships, or other ways of having, you know, emotional relationships or sexual relationships, you know, that they don't have to be in a violent way. And if we can actually get women to believe in that, or actually believe, you know, get women to actually believe that they don't need a man in their life to be successful, that they don't need a man in their life to form a family, that they don't need a man in their life to represent them or to protect them, then we can actually take a step as women to looking at life and the way we, you know, we have relationships with the world in a different way.
So it seems that it's not just the roots of, not just the symptoms of the problem, but also the roots of the problem. Which part has been lacking in society, what would you say?
I think that in Venezuela we've tried to have different roots and to grow differently from those roots, but it's not that simple because it's a social process. It's very slow. So I think that we need to act faster, and we need to stop hiding the problem. Because, for example, the stats that the United Nations has, they are the facts. They're alarming, yes. But they are not all of them. True.
We need to work on letting that also be out there, and people know that it's not just what's been out there, but it's a rooted problem as well.
Exactly.
Thank you very much, Maria. Unfortunately, we are running out of time, but thank you very much.
Well, you're welcome.
So we've been talking to María Ramírez Hernández on the figures of femicides across Latin America and what we can do as a society, as women and as men, to prevent these coward acts from spreading across the region. This is Interviews from Caracas. I'm Carla González. Thank you for your time, and until next time.